Hello everyone, it's Mrs. Wallace. I just wanted to do the free response questions. I'm just going to do one of them at a time. This is free response question 1. If you were not taking the quiz today, you might be interested in just going over your free response questions, so I'll hand it to you in class. Kind of follow along some of the questions, what you have, and then just kind of if you have a question about something that you did incorrectly, just check out this video. So the very first question is about the market for peaches, maple scones, and iced tea. And once we know that products are interrelated, we're interested in how they're interrelated. It could be on the supply side or on the demand side. So we are told first that we have a market for peaches. We're told that there's an equilibrium price and quantity. So the equilibrium price for peaches is going to be $1. The equilibrium quantity is going to be 1,000, and this is the market for peaches, okay? And of course, this is quantity, and this is price, this is supply, this is demand. We want to have everything nicely labeled for the AP folks. And now we're told that we have a binding price floor. Just kind of note a price floor is going to be above the equilibrium. So in this case, it's at $1.20. So you can draw in the price floor. You can even label it price floor. And this is going to cause the quantity supplied to increase, okay, to 1,500, okay? And this is what information we're given in the problem. So the first question we get, will the price floor result in a shortage or a surplus? So for 1I, we know that there's going to be a surplus. Why will there be a surplus? Because at this price of $1.20, we are no longer allocatively efficient. The allocatively efficient quantity for this market is 1,000. Once the government comes in, intervenes, and puts the price up to $1.20, we have a problem because the quantity supplied at the price of $1.20 is going to be at a much greater quantity than the quantity demanded, okay? So the quantity supplied is 1,500, quantity demanded is less than 1,000. So people don't particularly want this good, even though suppliers are incentivized at the price of $1.20 to increase production to 1,500. So we end up with a surplus. We end up with too many goods, and that's something that we know as soon as we see this gap between quantity supplied being greater than quantity demanded. The amount that is different between quantity supplied and quantity demanded would tell us how many products we have sitting on the shelf without being demanded. Because the law of demand is telling us that at $1.20, fewer consumers are looking to buy, there's fewer peaches that are bought. This quantity is a lot lower. This is going to become our effective quantity in this market. What I like to do is do a little dotted line down because that's reminding me when I'm talking about producer surplus, consumer surplus, revenue, anything related to this market, this is the quantity that's going to get bought or sold. If people don't want the good, it doesn't matter how many the suppliers make. Whatever people buy, that's what's actually going to be transacted in this market. Okay, so as soon as the price goes up, our quantity bought and sold in the market is going to be less than 1,000. 1,000 is still allocatively efficient, but we are not producing at the allocative efficient quantity, okay? So just kind of throwing out a couple of things. The second question was what happens to consumer surplus? Before, consumer surplus was big, right? It's like here, okay, sorry, I have to draw straight. Once the price goes up, consumer surplus is going to be much smaller. What happens to consumer surplus? It will decrease, okay? And the third question is about defining producer surplus. Now, producer surplus, when the price is higher, we're gonna end up with producer surplus like this, okay? This is going to be our producer surplus where that red is. We're only going as far as the quantity, so you have no surplus beyond this quantity of Q1 because there's no transactions taking place beyond that quantity. The price is $1.20, so producers are getting a higher price than before. That's a benefit for producers, okay? And we also can see that there's deadweight loss in this market. It's not allocatively efficient. If we were trying to define producer surplus, this is basically going to be the difference between what it costs to make a product, okay, or what producers are willing to sell the product for, and what they actually get for the product, what the actual price is. Okay, I know that's like not a neat definition, but you're looking at, there are producers who have surplus when they're willing to sell the product, for this price all the way down here, let's say 50 cents, but they actually get $1.20 for the good. That's producer surplus. They end up with a selling price that's much higher than they would have sold the price for. Maybe they made the good for very cheap, and now they're selling it at a much higher price. Okay, so that becomes something to consider. So that's our first one. If we go to the second question, now we're looking at peaches and maple scones. So here's maple scones. We're looking for a graph of maple scones, demand, supply. Okay, and here's our price and quantity, and now we're looking at maple scones. We're told to label, so we're following the labels of P1 and Q1. So sometimes, half of the battle with these free response questions is like reading them really, really carefully. And then for B, so like BI, I would just be like C graph. For B2I, on the graph drawn in part B, I show the impact of an increase in the price of peaches on the maple scone market. So we're told that peaches are an input. It tells us that peaches are used to make maple scones, oddly. This is an interest to us because it's one of the factors that shifts supply. The supply curve is going to shift to the left. Why? Because now the supply curve, supply 2, includes a higher price for an ingredient in maple scone. So if labor costs increase, capital costs increase, resource costs increase of any kind. Inputs is another word for resources. Think resources, think costs for producers. That is what shifts the supply curve. What happens to the new price and quantity? Our new price is going to be greater. Our new quantity is going to be less. You're labeling that on the graph. On the same graph, shade the area that represents the change in consumer surplus. Consumer surplus used to be here, and now because we've had a shift in the supply curve, we actually do have a new allocatively efficient quantity. Q2 is a quantity where quantity supplied meets quantity demanded. Okay, so there is an allocatively efficient quantity that's now less than the older allocatively efficient quantity. And the change in consumer surplus can be graphed as right here because the consumer surplus is now going to be smaller. So all of this would be the new consumer surplus, this yellow right here. That was also part of the old consumer surplus. So the change in consumer surplus is right there, okay? And so that's, for B, okay? If we look at part C, T is a complement to maple scones, okay? So here's demand, here's supply. Now I know that I'm graphing T, okay? And this is the quantity for T, this is the price for T. And we have here a double shift, right? Two things are happening. One is the price of maple scones increases and they're complementary goods. So I'm told that maple scones, the price is going to increase. Based on the law of demand for the graph for maple scones, if the price increases, that's telling me the quantity demanded decreased. If T is a complement and the quantity demanded of maple scones is decreasing, the demand curve, the demand shift for T is going to happen. So we're going to see kind of an equilibrium shift from here to here. But that's not the only shift that we have. We also have a lot of temperature changes due to climate change, and we're going to see a decrease in supply as a result of this, okay? And, what happens, right? The decrease in demand led to a quantity that's less and a price that's less. The decrease in supply, looks like a decrease in supply, led to a quantity decrease, but a price increase. Quantity, we know for sure, is decreasing because the quantity is decreasing when you decrease demand and it's decreasing when we decrease supply. So quantity is definitely decreased. Price is unknown, okay, or indeterminate or question mark or however you want to indicate that we don't know, okay? So, the question was show the new graph. So we needed the double shift. So you needed to be able to indicate a demand decrease, a supply increase, and then does the allocative efficient quantity for T increase, decrease, or stay the same. And also for C part I, you had to show on your graph, or at least indicate it like this, what happens to price and quantity as a result of this double shift. And some of you lost a point if you didn't do the double shift because you noted price and quantity changed in one direction but not the other. Anytime you have a double shift, something will be indeterminate. Something will be known and something will be indeterminate. Okay, so you don't want to have a double shift and a decrease in supply and a decrease in, a decrease in price and a decrease in quantity. One of those two will be indeterminate. So this very last question, does the allocative efficient quantity for T increase, decrease, or stay the same? Because we know that quantity is definitely going to have decreased, right? We said quantity is definitely going to decrease. We know that the allocatively efficient quantity, this is the last section, will decrease. Okay, so it used to be here, right? We don't know exactly where it's going to be, but it's going to be less than, point X, okay? It's going to be less than that quantity. It's going to be someplace over here, okay? I hope that helps. I will see you in class.